Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Ms. Corey Hyde to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Corey Hyde.
What do you do for a living?
I am the executive assistant to Miss Avery Bancroft.
How did you become her executive assistant?
Well, after I graduated from Miami University of Ohio, I had some real trouble finding my place in the world, both spiritually and professionally. I applied to become an executive assistant on a whim, and I just found somewhere where I could be the best version of myself with Miss Avery Bancroft. So I've been working for her ever since.
What do some of your duties as an executive assistant consist of?
Well, I do a lot of administrative stuff. I answer phones, schedule meetings, even help with her calendar. Basically, my job is to know everything that I can get to know about my boss so I can help her in any way that there is. And I think I do a pretty good job. For instance, I know that her favorite candy is Sour Patch Kids, and she only wears this really expensive perfume that I can't pronounce. It's too French for me.
So what kinds of tasks do you work with?
Well, recently I've been really involved with helping her in her proposal to get a second casino in Midlands. It's such an honor to be on the proposal team because it's such a big deal. Everyone's been working so hard because very few proposal licenses are given out each decade.
Was there anyone else on this team?
There was someone who was very involved from the Midlands Gambling Commission who led me to believe that he was an auditor. His name was Mickey Keenan.
And how did you become familiar with Mickey Keenan?
I actually got a phone call from him on March 1st, 2015. He said he wanted to talk more about the proposal and the idea that Miss Bancroft was being considered for it. And so I was very happy to make progress. So I met with him the next day.
And what happened at that meeting?
Well, he began by talking about specifics of our proposal, but then he began voicing concerns about possible gambling violations made by me or Miss Bancroft. I was confused and upset that someone would tell these lies about Miss Bancroft and myself. But then he pulled out a Midland State Police Department badge and threw it on the table. That's when I knew he was actually an undercover cop.
So did you become involved in his investigation?
Yes, I did. I didn't want to, but he persuaded me. He told me what his plan was going to be and how I could help.
And what was your role?
My role was to set up meetings between Keenan, Bancroft, and Mr. Covington, while he stayed undercover as an auditor for the Midlands Gambling Commission.
So when did you set up that first meeting?
The first meeting took place on March 31st between Keenan, Bancroft, and myself.
And what happened there?
Well, my role was to keep the conversation moving and to make sure that Miss Bancroft knew that to get her casino license passed, she had to sweeten the pot.
Did this attempt work?
No. I'll never forget the look on Miss Bancroft's face when Keenan mentioned the bribe. In my opinion, she looked completely surprised. She kept wringing her hands and fidgeting throughout the rest of the meeting. I had never seen my boss look so surprised.
So did you have to set up another meeting after that?
Yes, we met again on April 13th, but that meeting was completely different than the last.
What do you mean?
Well, security was really high. Before anyone could come in, the chief of security at the hotel, Danny Hoy, searched us. We weren't even allowed to bring our cell phones in.
So how did the conversation at this meeting begin?
Well, Miss Bancroft started reviewing her plans for her really awesome pitch, and then she and Covington started debating specifics, like whether or not a concert venue was needed. But then Keenan implied that to get the proposal passed, something more had to be done.
And what happened then?
Miss Bancroft and Mr. Covington kept glaring at each other, and they both looked really confused. But then someone rang the doorbell.
And who was that?
It was Devin Del Sesto, a bellhop. Mickey Keenan went up to answer the door for her.
What happened then?
Once Mr. Covington found out that Keenan left to go open the door for someone, he got upset, and he said it was a private meeting, so he grabbed his briefcase and he left. Everyone followed him.
Well, Miss Hyde, what happened following this meeting?
A few days later, I walked into Miss Bancroft's office, and I saw a briefcase that looked very similar to the one that Covington had walked out with, sitting on her desk. There was a receipt in her trash can.
Did you see that briefcase again?
Yes. A few days later, on April 16th, I walked into her office to go grab her for a lunch meeting with Covington and Keenan. I saw her putting stacks of money into the briefcase, a large sum. She looked so sad when she did it. Her posture was slouched, and she looked so resigned.
So then what happened to that meeting?
Well, Miss Bancroft and I walked to the meeting, and Keenan was waiting outside. We all sat down, and we waited for Covington to arrive. But after a while, it got uncomfortable. We sat there for about a half an hour, but Covington never showed up. Mr. Keenan went to the bathroom, and at that point, Miss Bancroft grabbed her briefcase, and she got up and left. She said she had had enough.
What did you do?
I waited with Keenan in the hotel room for about until 1:30 p.m. But at that point, I had just had it. I had felt so manipulated by what he made me do and all the meetings that I had to set up for him. I just had enough. So I walked out of the room and out of the casino.
Was that the last meeting before the vote on April 17, 2015?
That was the last meeting that I set up. The next day, they voted for the casino to pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hyde. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ross? Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed? Good afternoon, Ms. Hyde.
Good afternoon.
My name is Chris. I'll be asking you a couple of questions today.
Mhm.
You are Avery Bancroft's executive assistant,
Yes, I am.
so you help Avery Bancroft with many of her tasks.
Yes, a lot of the administrative tasks I did previously.
One of your tasks as the executive assistant of Avery Bancroft is to set up meetings for Bancroft.
Yes, I helped her schedule a lot of meetings.
Recently, you also helped Ms. Bancroft put together her proposal to submit to the Midlands Gambling Commission.
Yes, as I said, I was very involved in the proposal team.
Like you said, this proposal was a really big deal.
Yes, you could say it was. They were pretty rare to get a casino license passed.
So it's essential that this proposal get approved.
I wouldn't call it essential, but we all worked really, really hard to try to make it happen.
But back to it, it was a really big deal.
Yes, it was a big deal.
And you are aware that casino licenses in Midlands are only handed out about, say, once every decade.
Yes, I said that in my direct.
You're also aware that you needed just 2 yes votes from 2 of the commissioners on board in order to obtain approval of your proposal.
Yes, that makes sense. The commission was only a 3-person commission, so 2 would be a pass.
So you said that you set up a meeting between yourself, Officer Keenan, and Ms. Bancroft.
Are you talking about the March 31st meeting?
Yes, Ms. Hyde.
Then yes.
Officer Keenan had you wear a wire to this meeting.
Yes, he did.
Officer Keenan needed this meeting recorded. That's why he made you wear the wire.
Yes.
So now you set up a meeting between Ms. Bancroft, yourself, Officer Keenan, and Mr. Covington on April the 13th.
Yes.
But I want to talk to you about a day before that meeting on April the 12th.
Okay.
You sat in on a security briefing between Ms. Bancroft's head of security, Danny Hoy, and Ms. Bancroft.
Yes, that's true. She wanted security to be very high because it was a personal meeting between her and Mr. Covington.
So, Ms. Bancroft, Mr. Hoy had many security suggestions during this meeting.
Yeah, he suggested a lot of stuff, but Miss Bancroft said that most of it wasn't necessary.
So, I just want to be clear. The meeting room where the meeting was held between you, Ms. Bancroft, Mr. Covington, and Officer Keenan, that room has no security cameras, correct?
That is what Danny Hoy said, yes.
Okay. And in this meeting, the head of security, Danny Hoy, he was concerned about that.
Yes, he was.
And he's the head of security. He knows a great deal about security.
He does, but I don't think he knew exactly what the meeting was going to be for, the proposal, so I don't know how that matters.
One of Mr. Hoy's suggestions in this meeting was that the meeting be held in a glass conference room.
Yeah, Danny Hoy is really particular about security.
Bancroft immediately dismissed this idea.
Yeah, there was no need for it.
Another suggestion that Mr. Hoy had in this meeting was that a mobile security camera be put into that meeting room. Correct?
I believe so, yes.
Ms. Bancroft immediately dismissed this idea.
Yeah, she wanted security to be well, but she didn't want it to be that high. There was no need, as I said before.
A couple other things I want to take from this meeting. Mr. Hoy also suggested that a security sweep be done of the room before anyone could enter the room.
Yes, I believe he did.
And everyone was patted down thoroughly before they entered the room.
Yes, that was one of the security precautions that we took.
All cell phones were taken before anyone could enter the room.
Yeah, that happened. It was really inconvenient.
Cell phones can record.
Yes, they have many functions.
So I want to take you back to when you were an informant for Mr. Keenan. Mr. Keenan had you wear a recording device in the meeting, right?
On the March 31st meeting,
Yes.
yes. he did.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I don't think it's been asked, so I'm going to allow this. Go ahead.
So Officer Keenan had you wear a wire when he needed to get information concerning a bribe.
On the March 31st meeting, yes, he wanted information.
But Ms. Bancroft wanted no recording of her meeting,
She didn't feel that it was necessary at the time.
but she wanted no recording of her meeting.
I guess you could say that, but that's not the reason that cell phones were not allowed in.
Could you give me a yes or no?
I have no way of knowing what her reasoning for it was, so I really can't give you a yes or no, I'm sorry.
But there was no way of recording that meeting. No cell phones, no cameras. The meeting room was held in one of the only suites in the hotel.
Objection, Your Honor, compound.
I'm going to ask that you break up those questions.
Okay. There was no way of recording that meeting. There were no cell phones on which can record.
That's true,
There were no cameras in that meeting room.
that's true.
And Bancroft dismissed the idea of a mobile security camera in that room.
Like I said, yes.
So there was no way of knowing anything to any outsiders in the world what happened in that room.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
So after all these security precautions were taken, Mr. Bancroft even had Mr. Hoy stand outside the door to make sure that no one could enter the room.
Yes, I guess that's true.
So now I want to take you to inside the meeting room.
Okay.
Inside that meeting room, Mr. Covington looked at Mr. Bancroft and said, that they would need a good reason for voting for his proposal.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
We're not using this statement for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather the effect on the listener of Ms. Bancroft's response to this question.
What is that statement again, did you say?
That we would need a good reason for voting for your proposal. That's what Bancroft,
That's what Covington said.
that's what Covington asked.
Response?
Your Honor, this statement is going towards the truth of the matter asserted, and because it is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter, it's hearsay.
Why is it going to the truth of the matter?
The statement itself is describing Mr. Covington's needs for voting a proposal, and today's case is about bribery. The prosecution has a burden, and that is to prove predisposition. However, they're mentioning a statement in which Mr. Covington is saying why this proposal needs to be voted for. It's an out-of-court statement, and it's being offered for the truth of the matter.
Response?
Your Honor, we don't care about the statement that Covington said at all. We just want to elicit Bancroft's response to a simple statement.
Do you have an offer of proof of what Bancroft's response is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that?
Bancroft responded saying, how about 100,000 reasons?
Okay. Based on that, I'm going to sustain the objection because it's being used for the truth of the matter. So
Okay, I'll move on, Your Honor. I want to go to April 16th. You saw Bancroft alone in his office.
Yes, I did walk in to see her.
You saw Miss Bancroft with a black briefcase on her desk, putting in what appeared to be $200,000 in that briefcase.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
on that ground's overruled.
Let me get you back to my question. You saw Miss Bancroft in her office stuffing what appeared to be $200,000 into a black briefcase.
Yes, as I said on my direct, that's what I found.
It was Bancroft alone in her office putting this money in this briefcase.
Yes, she was gonna go meet with Keenan and Covington, so she was getting ready, I assume.
So when you, Miss Bancroft, left this room, you went to go to the meeting that was supposed to happen between Mr. Covington and Officer Keenan.
Yes, that's true.
Now, at this meeting, Mr. Covington never showed up.
Yes, as I said in my direct, we waited a long time for him, but he never came.
About 30 minutes into that meeting, Officer Keenan got up to use the restroom.
Yes, that's true.
As soon as Officer Keenan got up to use the restroom, Mr. Bancroft then took the briefcase and left out of the room.
Miss Bancroft did that, yes.
Yes, Ms. Bancroft. She took the briefcase and left out of the room.
Yeah, she, I assume, had enough waiting.
Now I want to ask you, did Officer Keenan leave with Ms. Bancroft?
No, we've established that they left at separate times.
So when Officer Keenan came back into the room, did she know where Ms. Bancroft had went?
No, she was livid that Miss Bancroft wasn't waiting for her back in the room.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. I simply ask that my witness be allowed to step down.
Your excuse. How are we doing on time? What is,
3:16.
I believe all of us isn't until around 4:20.
all right, so you guys want 5 minutes before closing? All right, let's take 5 minutes.